The President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear the testimony of Mr. Ong Chat. Mr. Dao and San, you are now instructed to report to the chamber the current status of the parties to the proceedings. And San, Mr. President and Your Honors, today, the 30th of April 2013, all parties to the proceedings are present, and Mr. Nunchi is present in his holding cell according to the ruling by the chamber due to his health concerns. National legal lawyer for the civil party is absent due to his personal commitment, and today the chamber is going to hear the testimony of Mr. Ong Chat, who is right in the courtroom. TCW 389 is a reserved witness who took the oath already. According to the best recollection or knowledge, the witness is not in a relationship with the accused or a civil party in this count. Mr. Moon Sawan is his or the witness jury counsel. Thank you. The President, thank you. Before we hand over to the co-prosecutors, we would like to inform Mr. Ong Chat that the chamber notes that you have diabetes, and that with that the chamber would allow you to go to the bathroom as soon as you wish. Now, without further ado, we would like to hand over to the co-prosecutors. Co-prosecutor, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Your Honors. I would like to hand over to my learned colleague, Mr. Keith Rayner, to put some questions to the witness. The President, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours, and good morning, Mr. Ong Chat. I'd like to please start by asking you some follow-up questions about the ranks of the Lon Nol soldiers who attended the meeting at the provincial hall in Pursat and who were then taken away from that meeting. I'm referring to your statement to the co-investigating judges D125/176 and at Khmer page 00277-334 you stated this, and I quote, "The Khmer Rouge leaders told me that these attendees were Lon Nol military officers with the ranks of second lieutenant, captain, and up to general. Can you confirm if any of these people were wearing their rank on military clothing?"
Response. I do not remember having seen the rank being worn on the military uniform of those attendees. I only knew that the attendees were of senior ranks.
You stated on Khmer page 0027739 through 30 this, and I quote, I recognise Mr. Pell, and if I have the pronunciation wrong, you can correct me. I recognised Mr. Pell, an officer of Lon Nol military and commander of the regiment stationing at Tulpo Tray. He had also come to the meeting and, along with others, boarded a car to follow the Khmer Rouge. Can you help us on what rank Pearl, the commander of the regiment, held?
Response. I know Mr. Pal very well because his barrack was close to my area, and he was the most senior person in the military, although I don't know his actual rank, but he was the most senior military personnel in the area.
Dealing with the period after the meeting at the provincial hall, at the same Khmer pages, you said this, and I quote, I saw those Lon Nol soldiers were happy. They told their relatives waiting and standing on the road that please inform our relatives at home that we are going to study and will meet with the King Father, end quote. Can you give us some idea, please, of how many relatives were waiting outside the Persat Provincial Hall
Response. There were a lot of people who were seen waiting and standing along the roadsides, waving at people who were leaving, and they said, or they told those family members of theirs that they would be going to the study sessions, and they were heading to the direction of the Tonle Sap river, and I only learned later that they were sent to Tulpo Tray.
With regard to the transport arrangements taking the Lon Nol officers away from Persat, you said this on the same page, and again I quote, there were just 2 Khmer Rouge cars with about 10 fully armed guards leading the convoy of the Lon Nol soldiers, and there was a jeep with 5 Khmer soldiers in it, driving behind. I didn't know where they took them to. So in terms of the number of cars or trucks that the Lon Nol soldiers were in, how many were there? Approximately.
Response. I was not interested in the number of cars or trucks coming into the province at that time, but I could say that people would be loaded into some trucks, and when the trucks were full of people, then they would leave. Some trucks or cars were empty and were parked at the place.
In your statement, you described your movements after the meeting in the following way, and I quote, "When my guarding duty was over at 11 a.m, they had me go back to my place, which was near the hospital. I then asked for permission from my leader to visit my home village in Chien for 2 days. At that time, I saw those Lon Nol soldier vehicles were stopping at the Po village fort, which was in present Stok sub-district near Kdai Svet Pagoda, about 8 kilometres from the Tulpul Tray fort." My question, Mr. Ung Chat, were you walking from the hospital to your home? Were you on a moto? How were you travelling?
Response. I was on a moto. I borrowed the moto of a soldier for 2 days so that I could go to the area, and I also saw the military trucks parked along the road. I did not ask questions, but I knew that these trucks were the trucks that seen coming from the province a moment or a day before, and I did not take notice regarding what could have happened after that.
You said in your statement that at the Po village fort, and I quote, "I saw some people, some of whom were still in the cars, and others were sitting in a group under the trees' shades. I also saw Mr. Pell there. Because they saw me dressed in the Khmer Rouge military uniform, they shook hands with me and asked me where I was going. I told them that I was going to visit my home. When I asked them where they were going, they replied that they were going to study at the north bank of the Tonle Sap Lake." Close quote. Mr. Ung Chat, is Mr. Pearl that you saw at Po Fort the same, Mr. Pearl, that you have already mentioned in your evidence?
Response: Yes, he is. He is the same person because he also worked at barrack at Tulpochri and also control Po village. I saw him there, and he asked me where. He asked me a question, and I also learned later on that they would be going to a study session at the North Bank, and the truck would then go off.
What happened next, you described in your statement in the following manner, and I quote, "But Ankar only allowed one car at a time to get in there. I saw hundreds of the Khmer Rouge troops surrounding those Lon Nol soldiers. They also set checkpoints on site to ban people from travelling through that area. I was stopped and searched by them, but since I had a permission slip, they let me through. While I was there, I saw them letting a vehicle leave that place, one by one, in about every 20 minutes. The Khmer Rouge would not allow the next vehicle to leave for Tulpo Tray unless they saw the previous one, which had transported Lon Nol soldiers to Tulpo Tray earlier, returned. Later I saw the vehicle which had transported Lon Nol soldiers there earlier, returned empty." Now, Mr. Ung Chat, when you saw the hundreds of Khmer Rouge troops surrounding those Lon Nol soldiers, was this still at the location at Po Village Fort?
Response: Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was where the trucks would be packed, and as I told you, one truck would be allowed to leave at a time before another truck would be allowed to leave, and that's all I know.
Describing the speed of the Khmer Rouge vehicles involved in this operation, you said as follows, and I quote,
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. International Co-Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning, Counsel. Up until now, I haven't objected to the way questions are being phrased. I know the practice of reading out passages from the OCIJ statement, but we have now reached a moment in his statement that I feel it is very necessary to ask open questions. It doesn't come as a surprise to this chamber if I tell that there's very little evidence of what happened exactly. And so the potential evidence of this witness could be very important. So I think that we have now reached the moment that my learned friend on the other side should just ask, please, Mr. Witness, what happened, and not having him read the things, the specific things that he has said earlier to the OCIJ. So I object now to this line of questioning because it is leading.
President, thank you, Counsel. Counsel for Mr. Kilsampon, you may proceed first. Counsel Kong Samon. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to you and your honors, and good morning, everyone. On top of what the Counsel for Mr. Nunchi already stated, I can submit that the co-prosecutor was reading the record of the interview before the co-investigators. Although the statement that already given before the co-investigating judges is still consistent, I think it is a waste of time by reading out the same statement again.
Mr. President, this is not simply a well-established practice. It is a practice endorsed by you personally, or I should say directed by you personally, endorsed by all the judges of the court, repeated on countless occasions before multiple counsel throughout the past year. I entirely understand my learned friend's objections, who may be used to practicing in courts either with a jury or courts where judges haven't seen the statements before. But, Mr. President, you have seen these statements. You know what the contents are. You have consistently urged parties to have targeted questions based on their previous interviews. It is a well-established procedure in this court, and I ask you please to allow that procedure to continue and not to add confusion to how evidence is treated before these courts.
May I briefly reply? As I have said, Mr. President, I haven't been objecting to the first stage of questioning because I know that this is endorsed practice. However, now, that was my argument, we have reached an important phase or stage in his statement. Therefore, we should do it as open as possible. And in addition to this, even if it's an endorsed practice, it will definitely be a ground for appeal when we continue with this line of questioning in this way it has been done before.
The President, Mr. Kope, what would you like to say? Because the Chamber will be ruling upon this, and that you will not be allowed to raise the same issue, because the Chamber makes it clear time and again that if you would like to raise the same matter, you would have to take the opportunity to do that before the judges convene to deliberate on the matter, and that's why this practice is not really encouraged here. If you wish to say thing concerning the line of questioning by the co-prosecutor, you would not be allowed to do that. But you may have the floor if you have new points to raise. And please be reminded that in the future, every council is advised to raise their point all at once before the judges convene to deliberate on the matter finally. We would like to now hand over to Judge Silvercat to render our decision on the objection lodged by counsel for the accused.
Thank you, President. The Chamber wishes to emphasise that the fundamental rule, as summarised by the prosecutor, remains valid, and that this ruling is not in any way a variation of it. However, the Chamber sees the concerns that the defence for Nguyen Chia has raised, that the questioning has reached a delicate point and invites the prosecutor to ask more open questions from this point on. I wish to emphasise on the part of the Chamber that this is not an invitation to repeated concerns being expressed about the fundamental rule. We take Mr. Korpi's point that he has not objected when the fundamental rule has been followed, but that he is concerned at this particular point in this particular witness's evidence. Mr. Prosecutor, do you understand the ruling I have made on behalf of the Chamber? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Honour, Judge Cartwright. I understand it absolutely, and I will apply it from now on. Now, Mr. Ung Chat, when you were at the Po Fort, watching the vehicles, what speed were they driving at?
They were driving on an average speed. It was not that fast because the road was narrow, and they had to drive among the people when they were walking along the street, so the vehicle could not move fast.
When you left the checkpoint, where did you go?
I rode my bicycle to my house in Chia village, close to a military barrack. It was about 2.5 kilometers away from that place.
How many days did you stay at your village?
I asked for leave for only 1 day, so I stayed overnight over there, and then the next day I returned. I cannot recall the exact time when I returned, but it could be around 10 or so the next morning.
When you were returning, did you pass the Po Fort site?
Yes, I did pass it because I came back along the same route, and then I headed for Posat.
Did you stop and speak to some people there?
When I was coming back along the road, I stopped by and I also talked to people. People asked me whether I was returning back, and I told them accordingly that I was returning back. So along the way, I met some people whom I had acquainted with before.
Was there any conversation about the Lon Nol soldiers?
At that time, I did not bother to ask this question, but of course, among the civilians, they also talk among themselves that the day before they saw a fleet of trucks taking people, and they also heard the gunfires or artillery shell also in the nearby village. So they were talking among themselves that they heard gunfires somewhere. So I did not know whether or not there was a battlefield also somewhere nearby that village. I only heard from them when they were discussing. I did not know what triggered the gunfires in the place that they were talking about.
As a result of your conversation with the villagers, what did you understand had happened to the Lon Nol soldiers?
Well, at that time, I did not really know. I came back to the place where I stood guard the provincial hall. I did not see those Lon Nol soldiers anymore because I only saw empty trucks returning. And then when I asked for leave to return to my village, I actually lost track of that, and I did not even bother to ask where those people had been taken to. I only came back. I did not realize where the people had been to. I stayed, and when I returned back, I stayed in the market for some time, for about 3 hours or so, but I did not actually take notice of the disappearance of those soldiers. And I also at that time could not distinguish between soldiers and civilians because they were not wearing military uniform. All of them were wearing plain civilian clothes.
Did it transpire that you asked for an extension to your leave?
At that time, following the completion of my task, I knew a commander. I do not know where he where he had come from, but I knew him by the name of Sarum. I told him that I did not want to return to my base yet because my mother was sick. I told him that I wanted to take care of my ill mother, so he permitted me to. He wrote a letter permitting me to stay at the rear at that time.
Did you have any cousins at this time who were Lon Nol soldiers?
Yes, I do. But these soldiers were not taken to the training session. He was my cousin by the name of A Nhan. He actually resided in the village, close to my village too. He did not attend any training session, but in 1979 he was eventually killed.
What was your real reason for wanting to have your extended leave?
Well, I asked for leave at that time for the reason that my mother was being sick, and he took pity on me, and then he allowed me to stay back as per my request. And the commune committee at that time also allows me to stay back, so I had to work with the villagers planting crops in the village.
Well, Mr. Ung Chat, I propose to refresh your memory by reading out part of the interview. You stated this: "When I arrived at my unit, I asked my boss for an extension by telling him that my wife was sick. But in fact, I wanted to go to check on those corpses and see if my two cousins, who were Lon Nol soldiers, were also killed there." Does that refresh your memory, and is...
The President. Witness, please hold on. Mr. Victor Kope, you may proceed.
The prosecution has just heard the nuanced decision on the fact whether the questions are leading or not. We're still in the same phase. Prosecution asks first, was that the real reason? Why not ask, was that the reason? And now this particular statement is being read. It's incredibly leading, and it just shouldn't be done like that. I object.
Well, Mr. President, unless we're going to have a line-by-line indication from the chamber with every witness as to where the fundamental rule applies and where the fundamental rule doesn't, and if a witness doesn't remember the precise details, if the rule is being interpreted that the Crown can never refresh the memory of a witness based on his OCIJ statement, then that again, not just a departure, a wholesale departure from our pre-existing practice. So there has to be clarity in this, one way or the other. Either you are continuing your practice or not. This is not about, in my submission, the main part of this witness's testimony, and he should be entitled to say whether what he told the OCIJ is correct, especially bearing in mind the standard questions that you ask, Mr. President, of the witness as to whether their OCIJ statement is true. Now, that questioning to you of a witness at the start of their testimony, do you stand by your previous OCIJ statement, that either has a reason in these proceedings or it doesn't, and we may as well scrap that rule.
May I quickly reply, Mr. President? It is not at all the case that this is a sort of minor issue in the testimony that this present witness is giving. The prosecutor has managed to incorporate the word corpses in the statement and in his question. That is what it is all about. Were those Lon Nol soldiers shot, yes or no, and were there corpses, yes or no? So this is, on a fundamental point of the testimony of this witness, incredibly leading, and we shouldn't be doing like this.
The President. The objection and grounds of objection by the defense counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia on the last question posed by the prosecutor are not well grounded, and it is not therefore sustained. And the witness, I wish to remind all the parties that the witness before the chamber has already taken an oath before he comes to testify before the chamber. And before giving testimony, I, as the president of the bench, ask the witness concerning the interview he gave to the investigators of the OCIJs on the 2 occasions. And he actually testified that he did have that interview with the investigators. However, the chamber wishes to advise that the prosecutor should also take into consideration as well if you want to refer to any particular portion of the interview in the written records of interview by the investigator of the OCIJ, you should quote it verbatim of the interview. You should not add any additional words to this quotation, otherwise it may mislead this information. So you may now proceed, Mr. Prosecutor.
Mr. President, allow me to make one observation about your decision, which you just rendered, and specifically the part in your decision where you mentioned the fact that the witness is under.
The President, the issue is ruled upon. It is ruled upon, so you are not allowed to make any additional observation. Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I propose to quote verbatim, please, if I may, from the previous statement. Mr. Ung Chat, you said this in your statement, and I quote, "When I arrived at my unit, I asked my boss for an extension by telling him that my wife was sick. But in fact, I wanted to go to check on those corpses and see if my two cousins, who were Lon Nol soldiers, were also killed there." Close quote. Is that correct, what I have just read out to you?
The President, witness, please hold on. The National Counsel for Mr. Kyu Sampon, do you have any different issue to raise? Counsel Sampon, thank you, Mr. President. It is a minor issue indeed. I would like to ask the Chamber to direct Mr. Prosecutor to specify the exact location of where this happened.
Sorry, is my learned friend asking for the page reference or a geographical reference? I'm confused.
The President, he refers to the specific document number and the specific relevant ERN pages that you actually quoted the statement of the witness on which you base your question.
Khmer 002773331. Is what I've read to you correct, please, Mr. Ung Chat?
I did ask for the extension of my leave, but I did not actually intend to check those corpses, whether or not my cousin were among them. But when I went to see those corpses, I cannot really recall the event at that time.
Who did you go with to see the corpses?
No, I actually did not go to see those corpses on that day. It was only later did I go to that place, because the villagers at that time were surprised by the corpses, because some of the villagers went fishing at that time, and then they encounter many corpses over there, and then all the villagers went to see, and I only went along with them at that time, and I did not even know how many corpses altogether over there. But as for my cousin, at that time I realized that he was still alive.
When you eventually went to see the corpses, who were you walking with to the site where the corpses were? Names of two people.
I actually did not know those villagers, because villagers came from different villages. They went fishing, and that some of them rode their ox carts over there, and I went along with other villagers, but I did not know who they were. I don't know. And I went along with two villagers, but both of them were dead and now. And then a few days later, I was told that they use bulldozer to actually bury all of those corpses.
When you arrived at the site, what did you see?
I actually watched it from the distance. The barrack stretched over around 100 square meter, and I only saw the corpses from outside the fence of the barrack, and I could not recognize the corpses. And when the investigators actually went to meet me and they took me to that location, I could hardly recognize the place anymore because people had already planted vegetables or crops on that place. But of course, there were some remains of old clothes over there.
Mr. President, to save time, I am going to give, please, with your leave, a direct quotation from the OCIJ statement. Mr. Ung Chat, in your...
The President, Mr. Victor Kope, you may proceed.
Although I don't know yet the quote, but I'm quite sure which quote is following, I am objecting to reading a quote from the OCIJ statement, and I particularly would like the Chamber to review again a paragraph cited or phrased by the OCIJs in the Site Identification Report 12 Brochet, that is document D125/217, English ERN number 0029438, and on page 4 in the middle of that page it is written as follows by
The President, Council, can you please speak more slowly when it comes to reading out the document number and relevant ERN number? The Chamber has always reminded all parties that when it comes to reading ERN numbers and document numbers, please go slowly, otherwise the record is not properly kept.
I do apologize, Mr. President. It is document number D125/217. It is it's called Site Identification Report 12 Brochet. The page number in English is 00294-308. And on page 4 of this report, following is written: the credibility of witness Ung Chat in one part of his statement is questioned. It's the impression of the investigator that the witness does not disclose the full alleged participation. His detailed knowledge gives reason that he might have been closer to the events when he testified so far, in areas where he describes the basic locations, the course of the events prior and after the execution, the burial of his bodies. His testimony is very credible and matches with the account of other witnesses. Now, of course, I'm not necessarily convinced that the doubts of these investigators are well founded. But the fact remains that there is doubt about the credibility of this witness in either direction. So once again, if we ask questions to this specific witness, they should be open and they should not be referring, one should not be referring, the prosecutor should not be referring to specific parts of his OCIJ statement.
Mr. President, credibility is a matter for you and your fellow judges. To be raising objections to a line of questioning based on an opinion expressed by an investigator after a site investigation report with a witness, giving unspecified comments as to his credibility, is in my respectful submission foundless, and I should be able to proceed as I have suggested.
The President, you may proceed, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, and please follow what has been directed by the Chamber in whatever case.
Mr. President, I said that with your leave I propose to read a direct quotation from Mr. Ung Chat's statement. Mr. Ung Chat, in your statement, still at the same Khmer page as I have previously given, you stated this, and I quote, "At that site, inside the Tul Poltre fort, I saw all the dead bodies were on the ground with their heads pointing north. I saw the arms of the corpses were tied to the back, and the corpses were tied up together in 15 to 20 by a rope. Wound marks on the heads and torsos of those corpses were clearly visible, and there was a strong smell of blood at the site." Is that correct?
Response. I wish to make it clear that when I saw the corpses, I did not see the corpses personally, because people had been in the place before me, and villagers would then recall what they saw. So I can say now that this account is reflecting what happened to the corpses, but I heard from what people told me. So again, I recollect this event through the story retold by the villagers who saw this first.
Let me break this down, please. Do you accept that you walked from your village or near your village with two people to Tul Poltre? Yes or no?
Response. No. I was on an ox cart going fishing near the fort. It was about 2 kilometers. The place where we went fishing was about 2 kilometers from that complex, and I heard people talk to me about this.
I'm going to give you some direct quotes from your statement and ask you why you told the investigators these things and why you've told Mr. President that your statement is accurate. Firstly, this quotation on the same page. I quote, "I arrived at my home and left the motorbike there. And then I walked with two other persons, Duan and Nahan, through the forests toward Tul Po Tray. Why did you tell the investigators that you walked with those two people to Tul Po Tray?" ប៉ុន្តែពេលនេះលោកបែរជាឆ្លើយថាមិនច្បាស់ថាបរទេសទៅវិញនោះ
Response. I think I had no motorbike at that time. The motorbike was at a different place, and I did tell the truth, and my testimony can be confirmed by a person by the name Nyan. There was no motorbike.
Mr. Ungchat, you told the OCIJ investigators, and I'm not going to read the whole of the extract, but you used the words, "I saw all the dead bodies." Why did you tell the investigators that you saw all the dead bodies?
Response. As I told you, the President interrupts. Counsel for Mr. Kilsampon, you may proceed first. Counsel Kong Samon. Thank you, Mr. President. I may wish to refer to the question by the co-prosecutor when he asked the witness why he told the co-investigators that he saw the corpses, all the corpses. I believe that it is not the way it should be, because a witness could have been mistaken or should have given different account to the co-investigators, so such line of question should not be appropriate here. It should be a different way. The President, it is approach by each party in putting questions to a witness or civil party, and the chamber will not take this as appropriate when a counsel is on his feet to criticize another counsel for or instructing another counsel in the way of putting question. So the chamber would like a counsel for Mr. Kilsampon to be precise as well with his objection. And also, please be reminded that if counsels believe or are convinced that some questions are not appropriate, or perhaps there are gaps in questioning, then you may take the opportunity when the floor is offered to you to put those questions. And to save the court and the other party's time, counsels should be very careful when be on their feet, and please do your best not to intimidate the witness before us. And Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed, and time is almost over already.
Mr. Ung Chat, why did you tell the investigators these words, and I quote, "I saw all the dead bodies were on the ground with their heads pointing north," end quote?
Response. I may have to correct this statement. If I remember this clearly, I did not say exactly. I saw all the dead bodies were on the ground with their heads pointing north, because it is not possible that all the dead bodies would be with their heads pointing north.
Why did you tell the investigators these words, and I quote, "I saw the arms of the corpses," close quote?
Response. The people, the villagers who were there at the crime scene, saw the dead bodies whose hands were tied, whose arms were tied. And this is the account that I learned from them. And I asked them how these people died, and that's the way they told me. They said that people were killed when their arms were tied.
Why did you tell the investigating judges these words, and I quote, "I saw the corpses were only in civilian clothes," close quote?
Response. When I saw the corpses, I did not see them wear uniform, like military uniforms. They were wearing civilian clothes, and the corpses were scattering in the area, and the corpse perhaps could have been ransacked by the people who were trying to find some jewelry or belongings of these dead people.
What's the closest, you say, in meters that you got to a dead body that day?
Response. After the sting, the smell of the corpses already subsided, and the fence of this fort was removed. I went to the place to see the corpses, and I can't exactly say how far I could have been standing from the location where I saw these corpses.
In another part of your statement, and I'm going to give a direct quote, it's still on the same page. You said this, and I quote, "Some corpses were dragged into a pond nearby, and some were buried on site." Did you ever visit this pond and see any corpses?
Response. I brought the investigators to that pond, and the location where the bodies could have been buried before was now the plantation, and villagers would grow crops on that parcel of land, and the villagers would then use their hoe to dig the ground, and they could find some remains of the dead bodies. And also in the pond there were some remains as well, and we did not do anything other than returning back by a car.
Did you see remains of human bodies in a pond? And if so, when?
Response. I do not remember the exact date. I saw the remains, but we did not, or I did not see the scalps. We saw only fragments of the remain, like the bones of the corpses. And we saw that on the day when the investigators went to the location with me.
Mr. President, with your leave, can I please apply at this stage to play an extract of 2 minutes and 25 seconds from a film that you are already familiar with. It is the film by Tet Sambat, entitled One Day at Portray. It was a video that you saw in full during a document presentation on Tall Portray earlier in this case. And my application giving the witnesses evidence about, and this will become apparent as the film is played, about ponds and hell, I apply please to play an extract from E186.1R. It's item 12 on Xylab for that list of videos. The AV unit behind me have the video. I have checked with them that they have the video at the right timing point. And Mr. President, I apply to play this 2 minute 25 second extract and to ask one or two supplementary questions, and then the questioning from the OCP will conclude.
The President, you may proceed, and every booth officers are now directed to display these video on the screens.
Mùa nắng đây cái sản lạp rùi ơi cái thơ sản lạp ta hiền nữa nè và cái sản lạp rùi ơi theo mùa nắng bung đôi cái cao su chứ nè bù hơn nằm bù hai bao con đồ rồi chẳng ai con đồ cái xong dây phi tầm bốn cái trap dạng mấy giờ ở dương màu thử say mùi cái thà ông mà rớp tưa cái ông mà rớp tưa nữa nè tưa cái mong đô nó cao rơ vừa tụi vinh chẳng ngô cái rơ vô tờ vinh rơ vô tờ thơ tưa hay nào vinh đó cô năm kia rơ đó và khmau chứ nó ta khmau những làn vụ viên mà chu cọp đó thầy mong mà đo tờ bốn khơi nhà mấy mưa tết phiêu đi lòng này mà khơi khmau nhưng là khơi khmau nhưng khơi tờ phụ viên nó tên nâng đó cái cắt ba cắt ấy tố rồi chừng ai cũng tố
thì mới cái cắt đặt tận na hay bong từ chùa mưa mấy bong thì được thì sẽ cầm phim
no cắt đã nó mũi nó ta mất vía là bong cái này cắt đặt từ khang này mũi càng bông mũi càng chân mũi
chùa ấy hay cái đọt đặtอย่างmấy mưa bong chuyện thì
chùa lục pel lục rôn như là pi nè nên thế cắt
lục pel nó khang na lục run nó khang na hay cái đặt
lục run nó càng chơi lục pel nó càng bông mấy cái ham mà đôi chôl tân na kia mấy cái đôi chôl nó bạc cô dân chân ru đó đầu chôl tam song phong còn lọ một mệnh bay một tấc bông
cái bong mồi chọt run để boi khơi múc boi chua chẳng ngay na để
mình xem tôi can lên như là tôi vòng bay là bong lên như là tập bong cái đầu là pin chuyển rong là bong á nè cái đặt chân run nè ba khmoi chứ mình nó tập lại nhân run lên nó họ ao kẹt ấy nó khơi cái cát cái co kẹt chân nam sạ trung kẹt đó đôi lục pel nhưng nhập về tận này hình đó cái vô ta đau ba lên nâu hồi chừng đó miên tôi ấy
Mr. Ung Chat, is that man's pronunciation of Mr. Pearl the same as your pronunciation of Mr. Pearl?
Response: Yes, the name is pronounced the same as the name of the person I mentioned.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. President and Your Honours. That concludes the questioning from the Office of the Co-Prosecutors. Thank you.
The President, International Counsel for Mr. Kilsampon, you may proceed.
Oui, Monsieur le
Mr. President, good morning, and good morning to all the judges of the chamber. I just want to make a brief observation to say that we have not objected, but we want a record to reflect the fact that this audio document is not in the interface regarding this witness. I just want to say this so that we should have the same latitude and flexibility in dealing with other witnesses who will appear before this trial chamber.
Can I explain, Mr. President, Your Honours, that this video file cannot be uploaded onto the interface? I contacted both the AV unit and, in fact, the trial chamber direct, Mr. Phillips, to inform him last week that this clip was going to be played. But as far as I understand it, the clip itself cannot be downloaded onto the interface. That was the information I had last Wednesday, I believe. Thank you.
The President, thank you. We would like to now hand over to legal lawyers for the civil parties to put some questions to the witness.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Lawyer Chet Van Lee will start this examination of the witness, and then I will follow suit. Before we start, may I know whether we will have at least 20 minutes or 30 minutes, which will give each of us 10 to 15 minutes. I believe the defense made lots of repetitive objections, Mr. President, and this led to a loss of considerable time.
The President, you will be offered 15 additional minutes on top of the allotted time for this. You may proceed. Council Jade Van Lee. Thank you, Mr. President, and Your Honours, and very good morning to you and everyone. Very good morning, Mr. Ong Chat. I am Jade Van Lee, Counsel for the Civil Parties. I have a few questions. You already mentioned about the executions carried out at Tul Pojere. My questions are follow-up questions and focusing on the statement you provided before the co-investigators. Document D125. The President, Counsel for the Civil Party, please proceed until you finish reading this ERN, then we may proceed to the defense. Document D125/176 and D232/10. We believe that the witness has obtained these documents already. My first question would be, yesterday you said before the the co-prosecutors and the chamber that you was in charge of the market and a meeting. What or who rendered the decision for the plan to evacuate or to remove the market at Posat? Response. As a soldier in the battalion, I was under the supervision of Mr. Thơi and Saram, who were the co-commanders of the company. On the 19th of April, I had to carry out the order, and the order was rendered from these two commanders when I was asked to go to the provincial hall to guard at the outside area of the complex. I was not tasked with gathering civilians or soldiers to attend the meeting, so I was there only on guard duty. That's all. Question. As a guard at the provincial hall, what were you supposed to do, and how many people were attending the meeting at that provincial hall? Response. My battalion, rather my platoon, comprised of about 30 people, were deployed to stand guard at the outside of that complex, the provincial hall, and in the afternoon I was asked to follow a group of soldiers, one of whom was seen carrying a loudspeaker asking villagers to leave their homes. And after that I had to come back to my guarding position and continue guarding the premises. Question. Were you armed when you were on duty? Response. Yes, I was. We were armed when guarding the complex. But when we were at the market telling people to leave their market and homes, we were not armed. The soldiers at that time, I mean, we were commune soldiers, so we were not allowed to be armed in public place. But others were armed. Question: you said that the soldiers were gathered were Lonol soldiers, and they had to come to this provincial hall for the gathering. Who was in charge of bringing them? Response: I'm afraid I don't know who would would gather them, but the order was or must be rendered from Mr. Thơi, and whenever the order was issued, then it had to be carried out, and soldiers would be gathered. I noted that there were truckloads of people or soldiers into the town hall. I did not know what happened inside. Council, thank you. I would like you to clarify a few points. Yesterday, you said that Lonol soldiers were attending this meeting, but they were wearing civilian clothes. How could you identify them as Lonol soldiers if they were wearing civilian clothes? Were all the attendees soldiers or civilians? Or there were some civilians also?
I could recognize that they were Lonol soldiers because I knew Mr. Pal. Mr. Pal was a former soldier of Lonol, so I thought that those people were soldiers. But I also had some reservation in my thinking at that time because I just wonder why those people were not wearing military uniform if they were soldiers. But I did not ask people about that because I was supposed to stand guard the premise. I was not supposed to ask people any question. I cannot say with clarity that those people were all soldiers. Question: besides Mr. Pal, who was the regiment commander whom you knew, did you see any other people whom you might have known, for example, the former provincial governor or any civil servant from Lonol administration? Did you recognize any other people among those people attending the meeting? Response: no, I did not know anyone because I came from the countryside, very far from the provincial town. I did not recognize anyone. I only knew Mr. Pal, who was the commander in a military barrack nearby the place where I was positioned. And I did not know any other people, and I did not know their rank from the previous regime. I knew another man by the name of Tao as well, but I did not know him clearly. Question: did you meet or see Mr. Yu Thong, who was the former Posat provincial governor at the time? Response: I only heard of his name at that time. I heard from others. They told me that the former governor of this province was Mr. Yu Tong, but I did not meet him in person. I only heard of his name because I was an ordinary citizen coming from the countryside. I heard from others that a man by the name of Yu Tong was the former governor of the previous administration. Question. Can you expand on this issue? The people who were summoned to attend the meeting in Posat Provincial Hall, how did they gather those attendees? Because you were one of the guards who were standing guard the premise. So before they held the meeting, were there any prior meeting to arrange the necessary preparation for the meeting? We noticed that the attendees of the meeting included civilians and soldiers. Do you know how they gathered the presence of attendees in the meeting? Response. Well, I came to stand guard of the premise according to the order I received. I was tasked by my superior to stand guard this premise. So my duty was to provide security around the premise. I did not know whether or not plan had been arranged beforehand for the meeting. They did not even tell me what the meeting was all about. As I told the court yesterday, I was not told of anything of substance of this meeting. I was supposed to only handle the duty I was supposed to handle. I must not ask or question what was going on. So my role was merely standing guard of the premise. I did not know what was going on, and the meeting was held in a firmly closed door. I did not know what was discussed in the meeting. Question. At that time, did you happen to know that there was a meeting? The meeting was about the appeal for the support or appeal to rally the former Prince Norodom Sihanouk? Response. When people left the meeting, they walked past the main entrance and they got on the trucks. Normally, a truck was crowded with people, and people were talking. Some people were talking to each other, and I overheard them talk to each other that they were supposed to go for training session, and then they were heading northward. And at that time, I was very young. I did not understand everything that much. I did not know whether or not they went there to receive the prince or not. I was rather young. I did not want to ask them. I did not want to know other people's business at that time. I didn't even pay attention to it. Thank you, Mr. Witness. In the interest of time, I only have one more question for you. During the meeting, did you see or know any Democratic Cambodia leaders presiding over this meeting? Response. No, I did not know, because the place where I was positioned was at the entrance, the front gate of the building, and normally the leaders came from the back gate, so I did not know. Tasot and Tatoi at that time were the committee of the sector, and they also attended the meeting, but I never met them in person. I only heard that they were the commanders of the sector at that time. And it was, even in 1979, I only heard of Tatoi and Tasot, and I did not meet them in person. I heard from others that they were the superiors who managed the sector at that time. Council, thank you, Mr. Witness. Mr. President, due to my time constraint, I would like to cede the floor to my esteemed colleague, the President. Well, the time is now appropriate for a short break. The Chamber will adjourn now until 11 this morning, and court officer is instructed to facilitate the arrangement for the break of the witness and have him back by 11.